Hello everyone and welcome to SimpliCode's YouTube channel. Today we'll be taking you through the jQuery basics full course. This video tutorial will cover everything you need to know and understand about the basics of the well-known JavaScript library jQuery. By the end of this tutorial, you guys will be able to deploy basic projects using jQuery. But before we begin, let me tell you guys that we have regular updates on multiple programming videos. So if you are a programmer and if you want to learn something new, then consider getting subscribed to our YouTube channel and press that bell icon to never miss any updates from SimpliCode. So without any further delay, let's get started. Let's go through the agenda for this full course tutorial. We'll start this video with an introduction to jQuery. We'll then move on and cover topics like jQuery Selectors, jQuery Events, and jQuery Effects. Callback functions in jQuery and how jQuery is used to manipulate the document object model are certain topics we are going to cover in this tutorial. Following that, we'll also go through a brief introduction to jQuery Ui. We'll finish this video by creating a mini project wherein we'll create a calculator app using jQuery. So let's start this video with what is jQuery. Let's talk about what is jQuery. Introduced in the year 2006, when John Resig, a web developer, became frustrated with the issue of cross-browser JavaScript. He found it so complicated that he decided to develop the JavaScript library of his own to overcome this problem. That same library is known as jQuery today. So jQuery is an open source, fast, tiny, and rich feature library that makes it easy to interact with HTML documents, and it allows its users to manipulate and traverse DOM, handle events, animations, and Ajax in much simpler ways with an easy to use API that works in almost all modern browsers. In a nutshell, jQuery revolutionized the way of using JavaScript to interact with HTML documents. So let's move ahead and see how we can include JavaScript in a HTML file. So here we are in the HTML file. We have created an entirely new folder for this. We'll save all the jQuery related files in this particular folders. We have two more folders here. One is for the images we'll be using in further videos, and the other one is to save the jQuery library file, and we have a HTML and JavaScript files over here. Fine. Now there are two different ways of including jQuery in a HTML file. We can either use a CDN for that or download the jQuery file and save it somewhere in a system, and then we can use it later. So the former way needs an active internet connection, and for the latter one, the internet connection does not matter. So let's download the jQuery file and then we'll see how to use jQuery. Fine. We'll move to the jQuery website. So go to Google and write jquery.com. This will take you to this particular website. This is the jQuery website we have. You can see over here the size of this jQuery file is just 30 kilobytes. Really small, right? To download jQuery, click on this download jQuery button over here. The current ongoing version is version 3.6.0. and the previous two versions, which are 1.x and 2.x, no longer receives update patches. So if you are in 2021, then it's not worth using those versions. Click on the button and it will redirect us to a new page. Fine. So click on the download jQuery button. So here you can see we have different jQuery versions. So you can download the compressed version, the uncompressed development version, the map file, or you can also download the slim build. So what happens in slim build is it excludes the Ajax and effect modules. For now, what we are going to do is we are going to click on this download the uncompressed developmental jQuery version 3.6.0, and you can see we have some code written over here. The code looks a bit familiar, right? It's written in JavaScript only. There are more than 10,000 lines of code. So this is basically a library with code written for events, animations, and many more things. Now press Ctrl+S and save the file in your system. We'll keep it inside the jQuery folder and change the name. We'll keep it inside the jQuery folder. We'll go to desktop. Here's a jQuery file. We'll keep it inside this jQuery folder and we'll change the name to jQuery only. We'll remove the version name from here. Save it. So the file is downloaded and you can check it by going through the folder in your system. The file is saved. So let's move back to the VS Code and try to use this file in a HTML document. To include this jQuery file in a HTML document, we have to follow the exact same steps that we follow with JavaScript files. Use the script tag and write type and src and we are good to go. So let's include it here. We'll include the jQuery file at the bottom after the body tag because we want the HTML file to be rendered first. So what we'll do is we'll write here after the body tag script src is equals to, so what we have to write here is we have to write here jQuery. We have the file present inside the jQuery named folder. We'll write here jQuery.js. So this is the path of a jQuery file. We'll write here type is equals to text slash JavaScript and we'll close the script tag. We'll again do the same thing, but first let me close this for you. And now what we'll do is we'll include the JavaScript file as well. So we'll write here script and src is going to be jq.js. So this is the name of a JavaScript file. We'll write here type is equals to text slash JavaScript. Fine. So we have included the jQuery file to our HTML document as well as the JavaScript file as well. Fine. We are done with setting up jQuery. Let's go through a small and exciting example of using jQuery now. We'll discuss the syntax in the upcoming videos. You don't have to worry about it. Just giving you an example of what jQuery is capable of doing. So if you guys remember from the previous videos wherein we used JavaScript for fade in and fade out animations, we were fading in and out an image on a button click, right? And we had to write 10 to 15 lines of code for those two tiny tasks. So what we'll do is we'll do the same thing with jQuery in just one line. Let's find out how. So first thing first, what we'll do is we'll add an image. So we'll add an image to a HTML file. So here what we'll do is after this h1 tag we'll write here img src is equals to images slash jq.png. So this is the path of our image wherein we have saved our image already. We'll write here alt is equals to js and we'll use the id attribute. So let's say the id is img1 for this image. Next up we'll add a button as well. We'll write here button and we'll do the same thing. We'll write here on click. It will call a JavaScript function. So let's say the function name is func1 and we'll write here the button name. Fine. So let's say the button name is fade. Save it and here you can see we have an image over here. We can resize the image by using image height and image width property here, but let's leave it for now. And we have a fade button over here. You can see the fade button is not working. It's just a fake button for now. So we have been doing all this stuff for quite some time now, right? It's easy. The most straightforward task in HTML we can say. We need to define the function func1 now to make the image fade in and fade out on a button click. So what we'll do is we'll move to our JavaScript file and we'll write here function func1. So this is a function and then we have the body of this function. So that's simple. What we'll do is we'll write here dollar inside brackets. We'll access the id attribute. So we'll write here img1. Before that we'll write hash and after that we'll write here dot fade toggle and this is a function and we'll write a semicolon. So that's it guys, we are done with it. You guys might wonder about what we did here. So let me explain guys. So this $sign over here is called a selector and it is used to access an element from the HTML document. We'll discuss everything about it in the upcoming videos. So for now, Just think of it as the document.getElementById method we were using in JavaScript. It has the same functioning. Then we have a function named fadeToggle. This fadeToggle function is already defined in the jQuery file, which we saved earlier in our system. This function fades out the image if the image is there on the screen, and the good part is it also reverts the picture if we click on the button again. Isn't it interesting? We don't have to write lengthy code for such small tasks, so let's find out how it works. Save it, go to the browser and click on this fade button. See, the image is gone. Click on the fade button again and here it is. So guys, this is what jQuery can do in just one line. The setInterval method we were using previously also has an alternate here in jQuery. We have to write the time interval inside the fadeToggle function and that's it. What we have to do is we have to write here inside the fadeToggle function. So let's say we are writing here 3000 milliseconds. Save it and go to the browser. Here we are. Click on the fade button and see the magic. Easy and worth using, right? So I hope you guys understood all of this for now. Now, before we wrap up this video, let me show you guys the second way of including jQuery in a HTML file by using CDN. So we have to do the same thing again. So go to jquery.com again and click on the download button. Scroll down and you can see here it says using jQuery with CDN. A content distribution network or a CDN is a distributed network of proxy servers and their data centers. It provides high availability and performance by distributing the service related to end users, provided that the user has an active internet connection. So click on any of them from wherever you want to download. For example, we'll click on the cdnjs.cdn. So we'll click on this and it will take us to a new website. Copy the link from here with script tags. So if you click on here, it will say copy with script tag, right? So what we have to do is we have to copy the link from here with the script tags and go to the JavaScript file. Place it in place of script tag here. Now what we'll do is we'll paste it here instead of this script tag. Now we have written over here src as cdnjs.cloudflare.com and this is the whole path, and then we have integrity, cross origin, referral policy and all. Fine, save it now. Go to your program and let's see if it's working or not. Click on the fade button, wait for 3 seconds and it's totally working, right? So in today's video, we came across an introduction to jQuery. I hope you guys understood it and we'll go through everything about jQuery in the upcoming videos. We are all aware of accessing an HTML element in JavaScript. We have 3 different methods for that. The getElementById, the getElementByClassName method and the getElementsByTagName method. So these 3 methods we have been using for a long time. Apart from these 3 methods, we can also use query selectors for accessing CSS selectors, right? So let's do the same task using jQuery today. Now, selectors allow us to manipulate or access HTML elements as a group or single element in jQuery. The syntax for accessing any particular element is so simple that we don't have to remember all of it. Just go through it once and you might remember it for life. All we have to do is to use a $sign and pass the ID or class name with particular symbols to let the jQuery file know the type, and that's all. The question that arises here is how it is different from JavaScript. If we are doing the same thing in jQuery, then what is the real difference between these two? So guys, jQuery selectors are used to find or access HTML elements based on their name, ID, classes, types, attributes, values, and much more. In simple words, jQuery provides us the flexibility to access any element in different ways. jQuery selectors are based on CSS selectors and it contains some custom selectors as well. So let's start by going through the simple syntax and you guys will get an idea of what selectors are in jQuery. What we'll do is we'll create an HTML element with specific ID first and then we'll try to access that element. So what we'll do is we'll move to the body part and we'll write here div ID is equals to, let's say, div1. So we are creating a div tag. Now inside this, what we'll do is we'll write some paragraphs. So we'll use the p tag for that. So we'll write here p. Let's say we are writing here, this is paragraph 1. Let's add another paragraph here. What we'll do is we'll again use the p tag and we'll write here, this is paragraph 2. Fine. So what we'll do next is we'll copy this whole div tag and we'll paste it again. Basically what we are doing is we are creating two div tags here. Fine. We'll write the ID as div2 and here we'll write this is paragraph 3 and this is paragraph 4, just for your convenience, guys. Now what we'll do is we'll create a button and we'll call a function on clicking that button. So the same part with JavaScript as well. What we'll do here is we'll write here button and here we'll write on click. So after this we'll write, let's say we are creating a function named func1. This button click will call this function and let's say the button name is click me. Fine. What we did here was simple. We have used 2 div tags and 4 paragraph tags over here. Now we'll make some styling changes here in both the div tags so that they'll look different from each other. We have already added the style sheet here. We have the link as style sheet and the href is style.css. So this is a CSS file. We'll make some styling changes to our div tags from here. So before that, let's save this program once and check the output. So here are our paragraphs. We have paragraph 1, 2, 3 and 4. So all of these paragraphs are present inside 2 different div tags. We are not able to see those div tags, but we have used them here. So what we'll do is we'll make some styling changes to make them look different. So you can see the click me button is not working as of now. Now what we'll do next is we'll go to style.css and we'll start styling those div tags. We'll write here hash div1. So we'll style div1 first. We'll write here margin as auto. Let's say text align at the center. Border we are going to add. We'll write here border as 3 pixels black and dotted. Fine. Next up we'll write here font size as 50 pixels, let's say, and the background color is going to be, let's say, caded blue. Fine. Next up we'll write here height. So let's define the height of this div tag. We'll write here height as 300 pixels and width as 300 pixels. Fine. Now we have to write one more thing here. The position is going to be relative and save it. Here you can see we have a div tag over here. So you can see the font size is quite large. What we'll do is we'll reduce the font size here. Let's say the font size we are going to write here as 30 pixels. So now you can see it's working totally fine. We have 2 paragraphs inside a particular div tag. We have 2 paragraphs inside a container. What we'll do next is we'll copy this piece of code and we'll do the same thing for the second div tag. Right, we'll write here div2, save it, and here you can see we have 2 div tags over here. Now what we'll do is we'll change the color of this div tag. Fine. Let's say the color of this div tag is yellow. Save it, and here you can see we have 2 div tags over here. Right here margin top as 10 pixels. Fine, save it, and here you can see they are not touching each other now. Now we are done with styling our div tags according to our need. You can check it by going through the web page, and here you can see we have both our boxes present over here. So let's move on to the jQuery part now, and we'll try to make some changes in the styling of these div tags using jQuery selectors. So we'll move to a JavaScript file. First of all, we'll access both the div tags here. We'll try to make some changes in both the boxes using the element name. So we have to create a function named func1 here. So first of all, we'll do that. We'll write here function func1, and inside the body of this function, the next thing we have to do is to change the style of these div tags, right? So the jQuery syntax goes like this. We'll define the syntax first. So it goes like $, then we have the element name. So a $sign followed by an element name. Now the JavaScript alternative for this statement will be document dot get element by tag name, and then we'll write here the element name. Fine. So this is the alternative of this particular statement in JavaScript. You can check if it's right or not. So you can see here it's showing some error because we haven't written the original element name here. So it's totally fine. Now once we are done with this part, we have to mention here the action as well in the jQuery syntax. So the actions here may be predefined, or we can customize those functions as well. For now, we'll use the predefined actions. So let me tell you the syntax first. We'll write here action. So action is going to be a function which will perform certain tasks in the div tags. Fine. Now let's move on and write the actual code here. Now in this particular case, we are accessing the div tags here. So we want to make similar changes to both the div tags, right? What we can do is we'll write here $. Inside this, we'll write the element name inside double quotes, and after that we'll write the action name. So we'll write here .css, and inside CSS we'll write here background color, and after this we'll define the color here. So let's say the color is orange, let's say. So let's define them inside single inverted commas, and we are good to go. Now what we did here is we selected both the div tags. We have to put the element name inside the double quotes. Then we have the action as CSS that will allow us to make styling changes in the HTML elements. Then we have defined the style changes inside the brackets. Here what we are doing is we are changing the background color of both the div tags on the button click to orange. So let's save it. And what we'll do is we'll click on this click me button and see if it's working or not. So click on it and you can see the color is orange for both the div tags. You can see it again. We'll refresh this page, click on this click me button, and you can see the color is orange now. Fine. So this is how we can access all the elements from an HTML file using the element name only. It is an alternative to get element by tag name. Fine. Now let's suppose we want to make changes to a particular paragraph. Let's say paragraph 1 only. In JavaScript, we can do it with the help of document.getElementById method. In jQuery, we can also use the ID attribute to do so. So let's suppose we want to change the font style of paragraph 1 only. We want to change it to italic. So we'll do it with the help of jQuery. So what we have to do is we have to provide the paragraph tag and ID first. So we'll move to a HTML file. Here is the HTML file, and this is the paragraph 1. We'll use here ID as P1 for this paragraph. Save it now. And now what we'll do is we'll comment this piece of code and we'll write here again $. So we are using the ID attribute, so we have to use hash here. We'll write here P1 dot CSS is the action name, and inside this we'll write font style, and the font style is going to be italic. Fine. So we have to close this bracket over here, and we have to remove this bracket from here. Fine. The thing to notice here is we have to include the hash symbol before the ID attribute while accessing any particular ID. Save it, go to the browser and click on the button over here, and you can see the font style of the paragraph is changed to italic now. See, the same thing we can do with getElementById method as well. It's straightforward, right? Now, the question is, what if we have two elements with the same ID and we want to change the style of both the elements? In jQuery, it doesn't work in that way. So what we'll do here is we'll move to a HTML file and we'll give this paragraph 3 the same ID. So what we'll do is we'll write here ID as P1, save it now, and let's see if the font style for paragraph 3 changes or not on the button click. So on clicking the button over here, you can see the style does not change. It means that jQuery needs the ID to be unique for each element. Fine. So the other alternative to do so is to use the class attribute in place of ID attribute. We'll do the same thing. Instead of using ID as P1, what we'll do is we'll write here class. So let's say the class name is para for paragraph 1, and for paragraph 3 we'll use the same class name. We'll write here para. Now let's try to access both the elements using jQuery selectors. So we'll move to a JavaScript file again and we'll comment this statement, and over here what we'll do is we'll write here dollar element name. So we have to write here the class name with the dot symbol. Then we'll write here dot css and we'll write here font style as italic. Fine. Now save it. Click on the button over here and you'll be able to witness the change in the web page. So you can see it's not working. We have done something wrong here. So let's check it out once. We haven't saved the HTML file, I guess. So we'll save the HTML file. We'll save the JavaScript file and we'll click on this click me button. You can see the change in the web page now. Now you can see how we are able to make changes in both the paragraphs at the same time. So this is how we can use jQuery selectors. We have some more selectors in jQuery which we'll be discussing in the following video. Let me tell you guys what selectors are in jQuery again to revise what we have done till now. Selectors allow us to manipulate or access HTML elements as a group or single element in jQuery based on their name, ID, classes, types, attributes, values, and much more. In simple words, jQuery provides us the flexibility to access any element in different ways. The previous three selectors are easy to understand, and I hope you guys must have gotten the idea of how they actually work in jQuery. If you haven't watched the previous video on jQuery selectors, I recommend you to go through it as we will be using the same code we have used for those three selectors. So let's start with our first selector of the day. Over here, you can see we have the code from the previous video wherein we created two different boxes and made some style changes using jQuery selectors and actions. If you see here, we have used jQuery for selectors and we are performing certain actions, right? So if we click on this click me button, you can see the font style changes to italic for both paragraph 1 and paragraph 3. So what we'll do now is we'll add another box here with different content. Like let's say we are adding a list of items or something. So for that we'll go to a HTML file and we'll write here. After this div tag, we'll create another div tag. So inside this particular div tag, what we are going to do is we are going to provide the ID as, let's say, div3 to this particular div tag. Fine. Now inside here what we'll do is we'll use the unordered list and then we'll use list element. Fine. So here what we'll do is we'll write item 1 and we'll copy this piece of code and paste it again for 5 times. So let's change the item name to item 2, 3, 4 and 5. Save it and you can see here we have a list of items on our web page. So let's style this div tag as well to look almost the same as the other two containers. So what we'll do is we'll move to our CSS file, we'll copy this piece of code for div1 and we are going to paste it here. Fine. So what we are doing is we are basically using the same code. We are styling the element the same way we did for previous two div tags. Fine. Save it now and here you can see we have three boxes over here. We have three containers over here. The first two containers contain 4 paragraphs and the last container contains a list of items. Now we are done with both HTML and CSS parts. So let's move on to the jQuery part now. Now let's suppose we want to make changes in the first two containers only or in any two containers. Let's say we want to change the background color of the first container and the third container to green. And we have used the same class for the first and second container. Let's do one thing. We'll move to HTML file and you can see over here we have the first div tag with class as div with 2 V's and then we have another div tag with the same class. So the third one does not have any class for that, right? So in that case, we can't use the element name to do so because if we use the element name for making changes, then those changes will be visible in all the three containers. We can use the class name, but we have used the same class for div1 and div2, so it's impossible. What we can do here is we can use the ID attribute because we have unique IDs for both the div tags for div1 and div3. Now jQuery allows us to make the same changes in one or more elements using the ID attribute only. So the task is simple. What we have to do is we have to go to a JavaScript file or jQuery file we can say. We'll comment this statement for now and we'll write here dollar, and inside brackets we'll pass the ID attribute. So we'll write here div1 comma div2, and we have to put here the hash symbol because it represents the ID of any element. So we'll write here .css, and inside this we'll write background color, and the background color is going to be green. Fine. That's it guys. What we have to do is we have to separate the IDs with a comma, and we can make changes to several elements at the same time. Save it and click on the button over the browser. So what we'll do is we'll reduce the size a little bit so that both the containers are visible. So you can see the first and the third containers have same colors over here. So let me first change the color of the third container. We'll go here and we'll change the color to, let's say, gray. Fine, save it. And you can see all these three containers has different colors. So what we'll do is we'll save this piece of code and we'll click on this click me button. And you can see the containers with ID 1 and ID 2, the color is changed to green. So what if we want to do the same thing for the third container and the first container? So if we write here div3 instead of div2, save it now, click on the button, and you can see the color is changing for both the containers. So it's working totally fine. Not only that, but instead of using multiple IDs, we can also use different attributes at the same time. Like we can use the class name and the element name here as well. So let's say if we write here, let's comment this piece of code as well, and we'll write here in the next line dollar. Let's suppose we are writing here div1. So this is the ID for the first container. So we are using the hash symbol. So remember it is a ID, and right here we are writing li. So li is the tag name and we are using tag name over here. So what we'll do is we'll write here CSS and then we'll change the background color. And the background color is going to be, let's say, purple. Fine. So we are done with it. Save it and click on the click me button. You can see the color of both the elements changed at the same time. This is one of the reasons to choose jQuery. It provides us the ease to work on multiple attributes at the same time. The color of the first container and the color of the list elements changed simultaneously here. So we can also make changes to the particular element present inside a specific div tag. For example, let's say we have two more paragraphs outside the div tag. So let's add them first, and what we'll do is we'll move to our HTML file. We'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here after the h1 tag. Fine, now what we'll do is we'll change the paragraphs. So let's say the paragraph 1 says this is paragraph 1 outside div tags. Fine, we'll do the same here as well. We'll write here outside div tags. Save it now, and you can see over here we have two paragraphs over here. What we'll do is we'll remove this second container from here. So let's do it and save it now. We'll remove the styling as well for the second container. Save it. Now we have only two containers over here and we have a click me button. Fine. Now what we want is we want to make some changes to the paragraphs present inside the first and the second containers. We can't use the element name because it will make changes in all the paragraph elements. So what we can do here is we can write here. We'll move to a JavaScript file and we'll write here dollar, and inside this we'll write div greater than sign and we'll write here p. Now we are going to use here fade toggle. So what we did here is we asked jQuery to make changes to the paragraph elements present inside the div tags. We have also used the fade toggle action here to make it more clear to you guys. The syntax is simple. We have to pass the parent element with a greater than sign and then the element name in which we want to make changes. So let's see if this statement is working or not. Save it, move to the browser, click on this click me button and you can see the paragraph is completely hidden, right? You guys don't worry about the actions for now because we'll cover them in the upcoming videos. Although they are not complicated, but still, if you are thinking about them, then don't worry. We are here to help you with that. This statement can also work without the greater than sign, just like it does in the CSS properties. So let's see if it works or not after removing this greater than sign. Save it now. You can see the paragraphs are here and we want to fade them out on button click. So click on this click me button and you can see it's working totally fine. And if we click on this click me button again, you can see the paragraphs are here. Next up, what if we want to access the first paragraph only? Now we are talking about this particular paragraph. So what if we want to access it? We can't use any of the selectors we have been through till now. It does not have any ID or class, and we can't use the element name because that will make changes in all the paragraph elements. For that, what we have to do is we have to write here dollar, and after it we'll write p colon first. Fine. Then we'll write here fade toggle and we'll call this function. So we are done with it. This statement will access the first paragraph element from the whole HTML document. Save it, click on the button, and you can see on clicking the button the paragraph 1 is completely hidden. Click on the button again and the paragraph is here again. But will it work the same way if we write second in place of first? Like if we only want to access the second paragraph, not the first one. So let's try doing it and it will be easy for you to understand. So we'll write here second. Now what we want is we want to access this particular paragraph. Save the program, move to browser, click on this click me button and you can see it's not working. You can go through the inspect elements and you'll find an error over here. So if we go to console, you can see it says unsupported pseudo second. So it does not support this. So we can do it for the first element present in the HTML file only. So we'll write here first again, save it now, and you can see it's working now. We can do the same thing with the class name, ID or the element name. What else we can do here is we can make changes in the odd and even elements as well. So let's suppose we want to hide the list item present at odd numbers. For that, we have to write a simple code. So what we'll do is we'll comment this as well, because if you want to check it later, you can check it from here. That's why we are commenting all the statements. So what we'll do here is we'll write here li and we'll write here after colon even. Fine. Then we'll write here fade toggle. Save it. Click on the button over here. And the list elements present at 0, 2 and 4 are gone because even numbers start from 0. That's why the item 1, 3 and 5 are gone and the item 2 and 4 are present at odd places. Now we can do the same thing for odd elements as well. So for that we have to write here odd in place of even. Save it now. Click on the click me button and you can see the items 2 and 4 are gone now. Of course, they'll reappear on the screen if we click on the button again. That's because of the fade toggle method we have used. We'll cover them in future videos. So guys, with this, we have come to an end of this jQuery selectors video. We haven't covered all the selectors present in jQuery because the number of selectors present is quite large in jQuery. So we have covered all the important ones here in this video. As we have completed JavaScript before jQuery, so I hope you guys must know by now the definition of events. So the simple explanation of an event is something that happens. Like when we manipulate an HTML document in JavaScript, we try to do something on the web page, right? Several events take place on a website, like the user hovers over a specific elements or click on an element. Pressing a key in the website can also refer to an event, or submitting a form or playing a video also refers to an event in a website. So this is the basic definition of events. So let's go through an example of JavaScript events and we'll see what they actually are. We'll create a button for calling an event and then we'll do same sort of stuff with jQuery as well. So let's do it with JavaScript first. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll write here, we'll add an image on our browser. So we'll write here img src is equals to images. The image is present inside the images folder and the image name is j1.png. Then we'll write here alt and the alt is going to be JavaScript. Fine. Let's give it an ID as well. So we'll write here ID as img1 for this img tag, and then we'll create a button over here. So we'll write here button ID is equals to, let's say, btn, and then we have on click event. So we'll call a function on clicking the button. So we'll write here function func1, and then we'll close this tag. So let's say the name of this button is click. Fine, we are done with it. Save it. So the image is quite large, so what we'll do here is we'll change the size of this image. So we'll write here width is equals to, let's say, 250 pixels. Fine, save it now, and you can see the image size is fine now. So what we did here was a primary task. We have added an image and we are calling a function using the onClick event. It means that if the user clicks on this button, then something will happen, and for now that something depends upon us, and we'll define it after this. So basically something will change in the web page on button click. Fine. So let's define this function now first. So we'll move to a JavaScript file. This is a JavaScript file, and we'll write here function func1. Fine. So we have to define this function. So what we'll do is we'll write here document dot get element by id, and the id of image is image1, I guess. Let's confirm it once. So the id of image tag is img1, and then we'll write here dot style dot width. So let's say we are changing the width of this image on clicking the button. So we'll write here, let's say, 500 pixels. Fine, this is the size we want to change. Save it now. That's it. So we are doing all this to give you guys an idea of what events are in jQuery and how they are different from events in JavaScript. So this button click over here is basically an event. If we move to a HTML file and see here, so this on click over here is actually an event, and this event will call function1. So the function1 we have defined in a JavaScript file, and this function1 will change the width of this image. Fine, I hope you guys understood it. So what we'll do now is we'll save this piece of code. We'll go to the browser and click on this button. So click on it, and you can see the image size is large. Fine, you can refresh it, you can click on it, and the image size is large. We can also revert the changes by creating another function here, like we'll write here function func2, and then we'll give the original size, and on clicking another button the image will get back to its original size. So we can do it, but we'll not do it as of now. Now similar events are present in jQuery as well. The events and functioning remain the same. The only thing that changes in jQuery events is the way of calling an event. So the syntax in jQuery goes like this. So what we'll do is we'll remove this onClick button from a HTML file. We'll remove this onClick event from here, and now this button has an ID btn and it's actually a button. Now what we'll do here is we'll comment this piece of code because we want you guys to see the difference in both events in JavaScript and jQuery. Now what we'll do is we'll write here $. Inside this we'll access a button. So we'll write here button. Button is the element name. We are not using the ID attribute here. Of course we can write here hash btn as well. So we'll write here dot click, and what we'll do is we'll create a function name. So we will write here func1, and the next thing we are going to do here is we are going to create this function. We are going to write here function func1, and the rest of the things will remain the same. So we'll write here $. We'll access the image. So we'll write here hash img1, and then we'll write here dot css. We'll pass here width, and the width is going to be 500 pixels. Fine. So we are done with it. This click function over here. So if you see here, you can see this click is a function basically. So this click function over here is actually a predefined function in the jQuery library that will be used to perform a specific task on the web page. Save it. Save the program now. Move to the browser. Click on the button, and you can see the size is changing. We can also use the concept of anonymous function here. in place of creating a whole function, like if we don't want to write here func1 and then we don't want to create another function, what we can do here is we can write here dollar button, and then we'll write here dot click. Inside this we'll write function. This is the body of this function. We'll put semicolon over here and we'll copy this statement from here. Fine. Now comment this piece of code. And here we have used the concept of anonymous function. Fine. It's quite simple. So save it and click on the button. You can see it's working totally fine. So this was just a tutorial of how we can use events in jQuery. So this is basically an introduction of events. Now next up, we'll be going through an event that we'll be needing every time we are using jQuery. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here dollar and we are going to access document. So this document refers to the whole HTML document, and then we'll write here ready, and then we'll write here a function. So we'll create a body of this function. Now the ready function will be called after the HTML documents is fully loaded. What we want to do is we want to keep the jQuery part in a queue until the document is being loaded. So for example, let's say we have a big website with so many buttons and different things present inside it. Now the button will perform some actions on clicking, right? Let's say the user's internet speed is not adequate and the button loads before anything else on the web page. It will affect us, right? Like if the user presses the button before anything loads in the web page, then there's no way of writing any jQuery for that, right? We can't do anything for that. So what we want is we want the HTML document to be loaded fully before the jQuery part works. So for that we use the ready event. So ready is basically an event in jQuery. So make it a habit of using the ready event, guys. It is considered a good habit by programmers across the world. So what we have to do is we have to put this code in a jQuery part or JavaScript part, and then we have to write anything inside of it. So what we'll do is we'll cut it from here, we'll paste it here, and let's remove this for once. So this is how a JavaScript file will look like after including the ready event in a website. So what we have to do basically is we have to include the ready event in our JavaScript file, and then we have to start writing code for other events as well. We have been through certain types of events in the previous part. We have an idea of how to call an event in jQuery and how to use the onClick event to manipulate the HTML element. So we'll use the same code in today's video, as we'll be going through some more types of jQuery events, and you guys will have an idea of several jQuery events by the end of this tutorial. So let's start with the first event of the day. If you guys ever noticed that some buttons work on double click only. In JavaScript, we use on double click for such events. Now jQuery also supports such events. So in jQuery, instead of using double click or on double click, what we have to do is we'll go to this code and we'll write here double click only. That's it. So this is the event and this is the function we have created. So what will happen is on double clicking this button, this image size will change to 500 pixels. Rest of the part will remain the same. Now I suggest you guys to watch the previous part because we have been using the same code. So I hope you guys have watched that part before going through this video. So what we did here was we changed the name of click event to double click only, and the rest will remain the same. Now save the program, go to browser and click on this button over here. You can see the button is not working on clicking it. Now double click on it and it's working totally fine, right? So this is how we can use the double click jQuery event. Now the following events we'll cover are the mouse enter and mouse exit events. If you guys remember from the animations in JavaScript video wherein we were changing the animation on mouse over, then you must have noticed that we are using the on mouse over and on mouse out events, right? So the same events with the same task we have in jQuery as well. The names are mouse enter and mouse leave. So here the mouse enter event represents the on mouse over event and the mouse leave event represents the on mouse out event. Now the rest of the things will remain the same. What we'll do here is, let me just remove this piece of code and we'll write this code again. So we'll write here dollar and then we'll access our image. So this is the ID of our image. So we'll write here hash img1, and then we'll write here mouse enter, and then we'll create a function over here. So function totally depends upon us. We can create an anonymous function or we can create a separate function as well. So what we'll do here is we'll write here inside this function dollar, and we'll again access this image. So we'll write here img1 dot css, and then we'll pass the styles over here. We'll write here width, and we'll change the width of this image to 500 pixels. Fine. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll write the code for mouse leave event as well. So if you save this program for now, and you can go over here on the browser and hover your mouse cursor over the image, you can see the size is changing. Now what we'll do is we'll write the code for mouse leave event as well. So for that we'll write here dollar, and then we'll access the image again. We'll write here img1 dot mouse leave, and then we'll create a function over here. So we'll write here function, and the function will be responsible for the change in size of this image. So we'll write here dollar, then we'll again access the image. So we'll write here img1, then we'll write here dot css, and then we'll write here width is going to be again to the default ones. So the default width is, I guess, 250 pixels. Let's check it out over here. So if you can see here, the width of this image is 250 pixels, right? So what we'll do is we are done with it. We'll save this program and now go over to the browser. You can see that the image size increases on taking the mouse cursor over it, and the image gets back to its original size on taking the mouse cursor away from it. So simple and so easy, right? Now there exists a common event that can act like both the mouse enter event and the mouse leave event. So the hover event is used to do so. It takes 2 arguments and the rest will remain the same. So what we'll do is we'll comment this piece of code for now, and we'll write an alternate code for this. So we'll write here dollar, and then we'll access the image. So we'll write here #1, and then we'll write here hover. We'll write here func1 and func2. So these are the 2 functions we are going to create. So next up, let's create these functions. So we'll write here function func1. This is our first function, and then inside this we'll write dollar. We'll access the image again. So we'll write here img1 dot css dot css. Then we'll write here width, and the width is going to be, let's suppose, 500 pixels for on mouse over event. And then we'll create another function over here. We'll write here function func2. Now inside the body of this function, what we are going to do is we are going to copy this piece of code from here, and then we'll paste it here. Fine. Now instead of 500 pixel, we want the image to get back to its original form. So we'll write here 250 pixels only. So here we are done with the programming part. Now save this program, and you can see it over here that we have the exact same functionality like that of mouse enter and mouse leave events. So the hover event works almost the same. Now jQuery consists of several events, and we have discussed some of them till now. So there are some more events like the form events, keyboard events, and scroll events as well. We are not going to discuss all these events because the list is so long. And I hope that you guys must have got an idea about jQuery events by now. Let's start this video with a simple definition of effects. In layman terms, an effect refers to an event, condition, or state of affairs produced by a cause. For example, we click on a button on the website and suddenly the image disappears. This refers to the fade in effect, and then we click on another button and the image is back, the fade out effect, right? We have been through such effects and animations previously in the JavaScript part as well. If you guys remember, we have the zoom in and zoom out effects as well, wherein we were clicking on a button and the size of the image changes to large, and all of that stuff refers to effects and animations. I hope you guys must have got an idea about what we'll be doing in this particular video. First of all, we'll add an image to our HTML file and then we'll use different effects on that particular image. The task is straightforward, right? So let's move on to the programming part directly. Now let's add an image over here on the browser first. We can create a container as well, but let's do it with images only for now because it will be easy and more understanding for you guys. So we'll go through the hide and show effect first. So we'll add an image and 3 buttons to our web page. One for hiding, another one for showing, and the last one for both. So you'll understand it much better while working on them. So let's add the image and buttons over here. We'll write here img. src is going to be images slash j1.png. Then we'll write here alt as JavaScript. So this is a basic image we have in a images folder. We'll write here id as img1 for this image, and the width is, let's say, 250 pixels for this image. Fine. Save this program and you can see the image over here on the browser. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to add buttons as well. So we'll write here button, and let's say the id of this button is going to be btn1 for button 1. We'll write here height, then we'll copy this statement from here and we'll paste it 3 times. The button ID is going to be 2 and 3, and the button name is going to be show, and let's say the last button name is toggle. Fine. So here we are, we have an image over here and 3 buttons for different tasks. So what we want is, we want to hide the image by clicking on the hide button, and we want the image to get back on the web page by clicking on the show button. Fine. So what we'll do here is we'll use the br tag as well. So we'll write here br twice, and here you can see we have 3 buttons over here. Let me zoom it out a bit. So we have 3 buttons over here: hide, show, and toggle. So these 3 buttons have 3 different IDs, btn1, 2, and 3, and we have an image over here. Fine. Now let's move on to the jQuery part and we'll see how easy it is to perform such tasks in jQuery. So here's a JavaScript file and we have the ready function over here already. So we'll write a code inside this particular event only. Now what we'll do is we'll write here $, and then we'll write here button1. We'll access this button with id btn1. Then we'll write here click is the event, and we'll write here function, and the function is going to be an anonymous function. Fine. Next up we'll write here $. Then we'll access the image with id as img1. Then we'll write here .hide, and that's it. So what we did here was easy. We used the click event and the hide effect. Hide here is actually a predefined function in jQuery that will make the desired element completely hidden from the web page. So let's check the output for this code first. Save the program, move to the browser, and click on the hide button over here. So you can see the image is completely gone from the web page. It's not present here anymore. And you guys can see how easy it is to perform such tasks in jQuery because we have a predefined function already present in our jQuery file. Isn't it great? We don't have to write long code for a small task, right? All we need to do is to write a single line of code and we are good. Fine. So let's write the same code for the show button as well. Now we need to access the button with id as btn2 and the action will change to show. So what we'll do here is we'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here again. Now the next thing we'll be doing here is we'll be changing the id to btn2 and the hide function will change to show here. Fine. Now save the program, move to the browser, and you can see we have both the buttons working over here. If we click on this hide button, the image is hidden, and if we click on this show button, you can see the image is here again. So these 2 buttons are working totally fine. You can see if we click on the show button, the image is back here again. Now if we want this task to be performed after 2 seconds, let's say, we can say we want the image to take 2 seconds to hide, and we know that in JavaScript we can use the setTimeInterval method or the setTimeout method something like that. But in jQuery, we have an easy alternative for this. So what we have to do is we have to write here inside this hide action, we'll write here 2000. Similarly, we'll do the same thing for show as well. We'll write here 2000. Now 2000 here refers to 2 seconds. Fine. Save the program. Click on the hide button now, and you can see the image is taking 2 seconds to get completely hidden. Similar thing will happen with the show button as well. If we click on the show button, you can see the image takes 2 seconds for that as well. So it's working totally fine, right? It seems like the fade in and fade out effects, but there is a difference between this effect and the fade in and fade out effect. We'll go through it in a moment. For now, what we'll do is we'll add functionality to this toggle button over here. Now this toggle button over here has the capability to perform both tasks using a single button. What I mean by that is we don't have to create 2 separate buttons for hiding and showing the image. What we can do is we can also use a single button for this task. So let's add functionality to this button first, and for that we'll write here $. The ID for this toggle button is #btn3. Then we'll write here .click, and we are going to create an anonymous function. Now inside the body of this function, we'll again access the image. So we'll write here #img1. Then we'll write here .toggle. Fine. Let's change the timing here. Let's say we want this to take 3 seconds on using the toggle button. Now save this program, click on the hide and show button, and you can see they are taking 2 seconds to complete the task, right? 2 seconds to hide the image and 2 seconds to show the image again. Now the toggle button will work differently. What the toggle button will do is, on clicking the toggle button, it will take 3 seconds to hide the image, and if we click on this button again, you can see after 3 seconds the image is back here again. Fine. The toggle function over here is written in such a way that it can perform the tasks of both the hide and the show functions. The time we mentioned here totally depends upon us, so we can either use it or we can leave it as well. Now moving ahead, we have another type of effect present in jQuery which acts almost the same as the hide and show functions, but the animations is slightly different. So we are talking about the fade in and the fade out effects in jQuery. We'll go through them now and we'll see the difference between hide, show, toggle and fade in, fade out and fade toggle. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll add 3 more buttons in a HTML file so that we can witness the difference between all of them. So what we'll do is we'll copy this piece of code from here, we'll paste it here, and we'll write here the button ID is 4, 5 and 6. Now the button names are going to be fade in, and the second button is going to be fade out, and the last one is going to be fade toggle. Fine. Save the program, and you can see we have 3 more buttons over here. Now you guys will get confused, but don't worry about it. It's an easy task. So what we'll do now is we'll use jQuery for fading in and out this particular image. Now the syntax will remain the same. So we'll move to a JavaScript file. And now what we'll do is we'll access button 4, 5 and 6, which are fade in, fade out and fade toggle. So we'll write here #btn4 for the fade in button. So we'll write here .click, and on clicking we'll call an anonymous function again, and then we'll access the image over here. So the image ID is img1. Then we'll write here .fade in, and we'll pass the timestamp as well. So let's say the timestamp is 2000 for this fade in function. Fine. Now we'll do the same for fade out as well. So we'll copy this from here, we'll paste it here. The button ID is going to be 5, and instead of fade in we have fade out over here. Fine. So we have to write here fade out with a capital O and fade in with a capital I. Now we have written the code for both fade in and fade out buttons here so that it will not create any sort of confusion for you guys. The fade out effect works the same as the hide effect, and the fade in effect works the same way as the show effect. Fine. So save this piece of code, click on hide, and you can see these functions are working totally fine. The hide and show buttons are working totally fine. Now click on this fade out button and you can see the image fading out in 2 seconds. Click on the fade in button and the image is here back again after 2 seconds. So these two buttons are working totally fine. The fade toggle effect, the last button over here, we'll write the code for this button as well. So this fade toggle effect in jQuery acts the same as the toggle effect. It can work like the fade in and the fade out button. So let's write the code for that as well. What we'll do is we'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here. The button ID is 6, and instead of fade out, we'll write here fade toggle. Fine. Now save this program and you can see the button over here is working totally fine. On clicking fade toggle, the image fades away after 2 seconds, or we can say it's taking 2 seconds to fade away. And on clicking this fade toggle button again, you can see the image is here again. We can see the difference here as well between the hide, show and fade in, fade out effects. The fade effect is different from the other effect. The syntax although seems to be the same and no significant differences in the syntax and the working. The only different thing is the way of achieving the desired effect. You can see the difference by clicking the button. You can see on clicking the hide effect, the animation is different from that in fade in or fade out effect. You can see there is a difference of animations only. Now let's move ahead and talk about another effect in jQuery. The upcoming effect we'll discuss is the slide effect. The syntax is same, so let's go through the slide effect quickly. Now what we'll do is we'll add 3 buttons and we'll discuss the slide effect. Fine, so what we'll do here is let's remove these buttons and okay, so let's do one thing. Let's remove these 3 buttons and we'll write here ID is 7, 8 and 9. Fine. And then we'll change the name of these buttons. So we'll write here slide up, slide down, and let's say slide toggle. Fine. Now I hope you guys must have understood the working of slide toggle by now. It will work in both ways. It will make the image slide up and slide down at the same time by using a single button. So don't worry about it. We'll remove these BR tags from here and we'll paste them here. Save this program now and we have 3 buttons over here: slide up, slide down and slide toggle. Now what we'll do is we'll remove this piece of code as well. I hope you guys must have got it by now. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to write the code for slide effect. Fine. The syntax remains the same, so we'll write here $. The button ID is going to be btn7. For slide button, for slide up button, we'll write here the click event and we'll create a function over here. Fine. The task will remain the same. We'll write here again img1. We'll access this particular image and we'll write here slide up. We want this image to take 2 seconds to slide up. So we'll write here 2000 as the timestamp. Now save this program and click on the slide up button over here. You can see the image sliding in the upward direction. Right. Now what we'll do is we'll write the code for slide down and slide toggle as well. So we'll write here button 8 for slide down. We'll write here slide down instead of slide up, and we'll write here slide toggle. Fine. We'll write here btn9 for slide toggle. Save the program and you can see on the browser that all the buttons are working totally fine. If we click on slide up button, the slide up button is working fine. The slide down button is also working fine. And if we click on the slide toggle button, you can see the image is sliding up and down as well. So before wrapping up this video now, let me tell you guys about the stop method as well. So what we'll do is we'll add another stop button on our web page. We'll move to a HTML file. We'll copy this particular statement from here. We'll change the name of this button to stop and the button ID is going to be btn10. Fine. Save this program now. We'll move to a JavaScript file and we'll write here $. we'll access this stop button. So we'll write here hash btn10 dot click, and we'll create a function over here. Now inside this function we'll write hash img1. We'll access this image, and then we'll write here dot stop. So we are calling a function over here. So stop is a function basically. Now save the program and move to the browser. Now you can see if we click on this stop button when the effect is taking place. So if we click on this slide up button and then in between we click on this stop button, you can see the difference over here. We can slide down the image from here, and we can do the same thing with the stop button. So what stop button is doing is it stops the effect in between, right? You can see all the buttons over here are working totally fine, and we can stop this effect in between, right? So this is why we use jQuery for such tedious tasks. A single line of code can do it so quickly and so easily, right? So these are some of the significant effects we have in jQuery, and they are pretty easy to use as well. So we'll be discussing the animate method in the upcoming video, as that method needs some CSS styling along with jQuery and HTML. Here's the code from the last part wherein we use the scroll effect in an image. The image slides up on clicking the slide up button, and the image slides down on clicking the slide down button. We can also stop the sliding effect in between by clicking on this stop button as well. So far, we have been using these effects to make our web pages more interactive, right? Now, this animate effect we'll use in today's video is a bit different from these effects. The animate effect uses CSS properties, and it can be used to make an image or an object like a rectangle or something move across the web page in a particular manner. Seems confusing, right? So let's start writing the code and everything will be clear to you guys. We'll be using an image for this task. So let's remove all this code from here first. We'll write the code again. Now we'll remove this code from here and we'll write the code again. So let's add the image over here, and then we'll style that image using the style tag only. So we'll write here div. We'll be using a container for this. Inside this we'll write img. Now src is going to be images slash j1.png. So we'll be using the same image for this task. Then we'll write here alt. So let's say we are writing here something, and then we'll write here id as img, let's say. Fine. Let's close this image tag, save the program now, and you can see the image over here. The image size is quite large. We can reduce the size of a Chrome browser. So you can see this is the image. Now what we'll do next is we'll style this image using the style tag. So let's style this image as well here. We'll move to a head tag and we'll write here style. Fine. Now inside the style tag we'll access this image using the image ID. So ID for this image is img. We'll write here hash img, and then inside this we'll write some properties over here. So let's define the height of this image first. Let's say the height is going to be 250 pixels. Then we'll write here width as well. So let's say the width is again 250 pixels, and we'll use opacity over here. Fine. We'll write here opacity is equals to, let's say, 0.4. We'll discuss it later why we are using opacity here. Now the last thing we are going to do is we are going to write here position as absolute. So opacity here will define the fading effect of this image. Save this program and you can see it here on the browser. We have a picture with an opacity of 0.4. It's obviously different from the actual image. Let's increase the size of this image for now. So here's the image. Now the next thing we'll be doing is we'll be adding a button over here to call the animate effect. For that we'll write here after this button, and the button ID is going to be, let's say, btn. Then we'll write here the name of our button is, let's say, animate. Save this piece of code and you can see we have the animate button over here. We'll use the br tag to create some distance between the button and the image. So save this program and you can see over here that we have a button and an image. Now we'll use the animate effect to make this picture move across the browser, or we can say across the container. So we'll use the click event for the animate button. Now let's move on to the jQuery part. Here we are in the jQuery part. We'll remove this piece of code and now we'll try to access this animate button using the button ID. Fine. So for that we'll write here $. Inside this we'll write hash btn. So this is our button ID. And then we'll write here dot click. We are going to use the click event over here. Then we'll create an anonymous function. This task is easy and here we are. We have used the click event here. So the next thing we'll be doing is to use the animate effect now. So for that we'll write here $. Now we are going to use this animate effect over our image. So the image ID is img and then we'll write here dot animate and we'll leave it for now. Now this animate effect over here has three different parameters. The first one are going to be the CSS properties, the style changes we are going to create on a picture. So we'll write those changes inside the curly braces. The second parameter is the timestamp. And let's say we are using 2000 over here. So 2000 over here is the milliseconds. Now the third parameter, which is the callback. We'll be discussing callback in the upcoming videos. For now, we'll use these two parameters only. Now let's move ahead and we'll write the CSS properties here inside these curly braces. So we'll write over here. Let's say we are writing here left and we'll write here left as 150 pixels. Fine. Now this left property over here will take the image 150 pixels away from the left side of the container. So save this program and now you can witness the changes on this web page. Click on the animate button and you can see the image slides over to the right corner. The animation takes 2 seconds to complete because we have given the timestamp here as 2000 milliseconds. Let's reduce the size of this Chrome browser a bit and now you can see it properly. Refresh the page and we'll click on this animate button and you can see the image slides over. The effect is working fine. Let's make some more changes to this image style by clicking the animate button. All we have to do is to add some more CSS properties to this animate effect. And for that we'll write here some more properties with the help of commas only. So we'll put a comma over here and we'll write here, let's say opacity. So we'll change the opacity of this image to 1. Then we'll again use the comma and change the height and width as well. So let's say the height is going to be 400 pixels and then we'll write here width as well. Fine. So width is going to be again 400 pixels. So we are done with it. Now the height and width of this image will change to 400 pixels along with the opacity changing to 1. It means that the image will be completely opaque after clicking on the animate button. Save this program now and move to the browser. Click on the animate button here to see the magic now. You can see the size of the image increasing gradually here in 2 seconds. However, this animate method does not have any toggle function though. So we can't retrieve the changes just by clicking on the button again. Let me reduce the size a bit more so that it will be easy for you guys to understand this effect. Here we are, we have this effect. Click on the animate button and you can see the change now. From opacity as 0.4 to opacity as 1. There are some changes in the animations, right? So this is what animate effect does in jQuery. Now instead of writing here 2000, what we can do is we can write here slow or fast. So let's try doing it as well. What we'll do is we'll write here instead of 2000, we'll write here slow for now. So we'll write here slow, save this program, click on the animate button again and you can see the change. So it's not taking 2 seconds anymore. Now the slow keyword will work and the animation effect will change. Fine. So that's all that we have to discuss in this animate effect, guys. The task for you is to create another button over here to revert the changes and make the image get back to its original form. A very simple and easy task, right? Try doing it, guys, and let us know if you face any sort of problem. Let me give you guys an introduction to callbacks first. A callback function is a function that is passed to another function as an argument, and that particular function will get executed later on. It means that if we want to perform more than one task at a time, then we have the concept of a callback function to achieve it. For example, if we have an image and we want to apply more than one effect on that picture, but the thing is, we want the second effect only after the first one completes. Then in that case, we have to create a callback function that will be called only after the first effect is done. You guys will get it once we go through the programming part. So let's move on to the programming part directly without wasting any time. Now here we have the code from the previous part wherein we use the animate effect to make changes in an image by clicking on the animate button. The image height, width and opacity will change by clicking this animate button. If we click on it, you can see the image size changes along with the opacity as well. We discussed previously while working on the animate effects that this animate effect usually takes three different parameters. One for the CSS properties, the other is the timestamp, and the last remaining is the callback function. Let's say we want to perform another task after the animate effect takes place. A simple one like let's print a message first on the screen by using the alert method. So what we'll do is we'll move to a JavaScript file, and here we are in a JavaScript file, and we'll write here after this slow, we'll write here alert, and then we'll pass, let's say, animated over here. Fine. What we did here is we put a statement to get processed after the animate effect, right? We are expecting the animation to take place first, and then we get a pop-up with the message animated. The reality is going to be different. Now save this program, move to the browser, click on this animate button over here, and you can see the message popping up even before the animation takes place. Although jQuery processes the code line by line, but when it comes to effects, it performs the later task if the current one is taking time. There's nothing wrong with this program, but we can use the callback function to make it work more properly. Now a callback function is like we are asking the system to wait for the current task to complete and then execute another task. So let me take you through the syntax of this animate effect once again so that it will not create any sort of confusion. What we'll do is we'll write here the syntax, we'll comment it out. Now the animate effect takes three parameters, right? The syntax goes like this. We write dollar, then we have bracket, and we try to access the element, right? So let's say we have the ID as img here. Then we'll write here animate, and animate is basically a method, right? Now inside this we'll write a pair of curly braces, comma, timestamp, and we have another thing over here. So what we'll do is we'll write here function for now, and this is the correct syntax of animate effect with all the three parameters. Now the curly braces over here are for the CSS properties as we know. Then we have the timestamp, and the last function over here is the callback function. Now whatever task we want to perform after the animate effect takes place is what we'll be writing inside this callback function. For now, let's say we want to print this message on the screen after the animation takes place. So for that, we'll create an anonymous function after this timestamp in the animate method. What we'll do is we'll remove this piece of code from here, and here we have to add another argument. So this whole thing lies inside the animate method. Now we have to pass another argument over here. So what we'll do is we'll write here function, and this is going to be an anonymous function. Now what we want is we want to print a message after the animation takes place, right? So we'll write here alert, and then we'll write here, let's say, animated. Fine. Now save this program and move on to the browser. Click on the button over here, and you can see the animation will take place followed by the pop-up message. I hope you guys have got an idea of what callbacks are and how to use them. Right. Callbacks are not used with the animate method only. Instead, we can use callbacks for other methods as well. So let's try to use it with the slide up and the slide down animation effect. What we'll do is we'll access the same image using click event, and for that what we'll do is we'll remove this piece of code from here and we'll start writing the code again. So we'll write here dollar, and then we'll access the button. So for that we have to write here hash btn, as btn is the ID for animate button. Then we'll write here click, click is the event, and then we'll create a function inside it. Fine. So this is the body of this function, and now inside this function what we'll do is we'll again try to access the image to make animation changes over it. So we'll write here dollar, then we'll write here hash img, the ID of our image, then we'll write here slide up, and we'll write here, let's say, 2000 as the timestamp, And after this, we'll create a callback function. So for that, we'll write here function. And inside the body of this function, what we'll do is we'll access the same image, but this time we'll do it with slide down effect. Fine. So we'll write here dollar. Then we'll again access this particular image. We'll write here dot slide down, and we are good to go. Fine. What we did here was quite understandable. If you didn't understand, let me tell you again that we have used the slide up effect, and then we are trying to slide down that image right after the slide up effect occurs. So let's check it out if it's working or not. Save it and move on to the browser. Click on the animate button over here, and you can see that this image slides up in 2 seconds, and right after it, the slide down effect is taking place. We can also make the slide down effect work for 2 seconds by giving the timestamp over here. If we write here 2000, then both the effects will take 2 seconds to complete. Click on the animate button, and you can see both the animations are taking 2 seconds now. Now let's move ahead to jQuery chaining. So chaining in jQuery allows us to run multiple methods within a single statement. For example, we can chain more than one effect or method to a single HTML element. In chaining, if one task takes some time to complete, the following process could execute before completion. So let's go through the syntax one, and you guys will understand it. What we'll do is we'll remove this piece of code from here. Now we have a button click event over here. Inside this, we'll write dollar. We'll again access this image. We'll write here hash img. Then we have the slide up effect. So we'll write here slide up, and we'll pass the time as 2000 milliseconds over here. Then we'll write here dot, and we'll write here slide down. So what we did here is we changed two different effects. We changed slide up and slide down. So let's write here the timestamp as well. Let's say we are writing here 3000 for now. Now you will not spot any difference here though. We have changed two effects here. The slide down effect will take place right after the slide up effect. Save this program and try running it. You can see the opacity changing before the slide up effect takes place. So this is the difference between chaining and callbacks in jQuery, guys. We can chain as many effects as we want. So if we write here, let's say dot fade in, and we'll write here 2000. Then we'll write here dot, okay, let's call the fade out effect first. So we'll write here fade out, and then we'll write here fade in, and we'll write here 2000 again. So we'll change this to 2000 as well. And we have 5 different effects over here. We have slide up, CSS, slide down, fade out, and fade in. Fine. Save the program and try running it now. You can see on clicking the animate button, we have 4 different effects working together. We have slide up, slide down, fade out, and fade in, all working on time. Right. You guys can do so many things with callbacks and chaining in jQuery. Try it by yourself and let us know what exciting thing you did. Before we move on to DOM manipulation in jQuery, let's recall the definition of DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model, and it defines the whole HTML document in a hierarchical form to make it understandable for JavaScript or jQuery so that other functions can work over it. It represents the entire document in the form of objects and nodes, whether it be elements or tags or anything in the document stored in the Document Object Model. The entire page content can be accessed or manipulated by using JavaScript or jQuery. You can go through the DOM manipulation video and you will find it in the playlist. Now that we have enough knowledge about the document object model, we'll start writing the HTML code, and then we'll try to access that HTML document with the help of jQuery. So let's start this video, and we'll add a simple and small box over here with some text present inside and outside of it. So what we'll do is we'll write here inside the HTML document. We'll write here, let's say, we'll use the h2 tag and we'll write inside it, click on the button present below. So this is some text we have been adding here. So save it and you can see the text on the browser. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to use the span tag over here. So we'll write here span, and then we'll use id is equals to, let's say, span1, and we'll leave this tag for now. I'll tell you why we are doing so. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to add a container over here, inside which we are going to add a box. So we'll write here for that div, and then we'll use the class attribute. The class is going to be, let's say, div1, and then we'll write here style as background color, and the background color is going to be, let's say, aquamarine. Fine. So we'll close this div tag over here. Now inside this div tag, what we'll do is we'll write some more code over here. So we'll add a paragraph over here. We'll write here p, and the class is going to be p1 for this paragraph tag. Now we'll close this, and inside this paragraph tag, let's say we are writing this is box 1. Fine. We are done with it. The last thing we are going to do is we are going to add a button over here. We'll write here button, and the ID is going to be btn1 for this button. Then we'll close it and we'll write the button name. So let's say the button name is click me. Fine. What we did here was an easy task, right? We have been doing it all the time. Although there's a specific reason for using class here in place of ID for the paragraph tag and for the division tag. Save this piece of code, and you can see this is our division, inside which we have a paragraph over here which says this is box 1, and then we have a button over here. Now let's style these elements for now to make it look more cleaner. So we'll style these elements here only with the help of a style tag. So for that we'll move to a head section and we'll write here style. So inside this style tag, what we'll do is we'll start styling our elements. So first of all, we'll write here div1. We'll start with the box. So we'll write here height as, let's say, 250 pixels. Then we'll write here width as 250 pixels again. Then we'll write here border, and the border is going to be, let's say, 5 pixel thick, solid, and black in color. Fine. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to write here margin. Margin is going to be, let's say, 50 pixels. And the next thing we are going to do is we are going to write here font size as extra large. And then we'll write here font weight. So the font weight is going to be bolder. And the next thing we are going to do is we are going to style a paragraph. So we'll write here dot p1, and then we'll write here text align at the center, and margin is going to be, let's say, 100 pixels. Fine. Save this, and you can see we have a box over here with some text present inside it. The text says this is box 1. Now let's move on to the jQuery part, and we'll see what else we can do with these elements now. So here is a JavaScript file. We'll write a jQuery code right over here. So let's discuss what manipulation is before we start manipulating the HTML document. Manipulate refers to control something with skills, right? We want to control a HTML document on certain events. We ain't going to try something new or something different. So we'll use methods to do so. These methods are predefined in jQuery, and all we have to do is to use them with the correct syntax. That's it. We'll be good to go. Now let's try to access the text present inside the box first. What we'll do is we'll get the text from the box and then try to print this text on the screen with the help of jQuery method. So we'll write here $, then we'll access the division. So for that we'll write here .div1, because this is the class name for a box. Then we'll use event over here. So we'll write here click, and then we'll create an anonymous function. So this is our function. Inside this we'll write, let's say, where x will hold the value of the text. Then we'll write here $. We'll access the paragraph with class p1. Then we'll write here .html. So HTML here is the method. Then we'll write here $, and we'll try to access span tag. So we'll write here hash span1. Then we'll write here .text, and we'll pass x over here. Fine. Now over here what we did is we used the HTML tag to access the text present inside the paragraph tag. The HTML method gets the HTML content, or we can say the inner HTML of the matched element. Next up, We are using the text method to print the message on screen. So the span tag here inside the HTML document, you can see it over here. We have kept it empty on purpose because we want to print this particular text inside the span tag. That's why we left it empty over there. Now let's save this program and try to run it. Fine. So you can see the text here on the screen on clicking the box. You can see here this is box 1 present inside the span tag. Fine. Now there is a difference between the HTML method and the text method. So we'll see it now. What we'll do is we'll write here, we'll remove this piece of code, or we'll just comment it out. Fine. So that it will be easy for you guys to understand later. Now what we'll do is we'll write here $. Then we'll again try to access this division. So we'll write here .div1, then we'll write here .click, and we'll create a function over here. Fine. So this is an anonymous function, and inside it we'll write alert. We'll try to access a paragraph tag. So for that we'll write here $, and inside this we'll access p1. So we'll access our paragraph, and then we'll write here .html. Fine. Now this HTML method will give us the text present inside the element with class as p1, but there will be a difference. So before that, what we'll do is we'll move to a HTML file and make some changes over here. So we'll insert an I tag somewhere inside this paragraph. What we'll do is we'll write here I over here, and we'll put box 1 inside the I tag. So it will change the style a bit. It will change box 1 to italic, and rest of the thing will remain the same. Save the program now, and you can see the change in the box here. There is some italic text present in between the paragraph. Now click on the image, and you can see we have an alert box over here. If you can see here, we have the alert box and the italic tag is clearly visible. The HTML method gives us the whole thing present inside a particular tag. You can see it over here. It says this is, then it has I tag, box 1, and then I tag closed. So this is how the HTML method in jQuery actually works. Now if we use the text method here in place of the HTML method, the scenario will change. So let's try to do it as well. What we'll do is we'll write here text in place of HTML, save this program, click on the image over here, and you can see the text here inside the alert box. It's the plain text over here. You can see it says this is box 1 only. So guys, this is the difference between the HTML method and the text method. So I hope you guys understood. The next method we are going to discuss here is the attribute method. This method helps us in getting the attribute's value, or we can also change the attribute value as well. So let's say we want to know the ID of this particular paragraph tag. What we can do here is we can write here. So let's comment this piece of code as well first, and then we'll write here $. Then we'll again access the paragraph. So for that we have class as p1. Then we'll write here click, and then we'll create a function over here. Fine. Now inside this, what we'll do is we'll use the alert method again. Inside this we'll write $, and then we'll write here .p1. Then we'll write here .attr. So attr is the short form of attribute method. Then we'll write here, let's say class. Fine. Save this piece of code, go to the browser, click on the box, and you can see it says p1 over here. This is a class name. We can't change this class name for now. So what we'll do is we'll move to a HTML file, and we'll give an ID over here to the paragraph tag as well. So let's say we are writing here ID as ID p1. Now this is the ID of our paragraph tag. Save this piece of code, move to the jQuery file, and now we'll try to access the ID over here. So we'll write here ID, save the program, click on the box over here, and you can see the ID is ID p1. Fine. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to change this ID. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll change the ID of this paragraph tag on button click, on this button click. Fine. What we'll do is we'll write here before this piece of code, we'll write here $, and then we'll try to access the button. So the ID for a button is btn1. Then we'll write here dot click and we'll create a function over here. Fine. Now inside this function we'll write dollar, and then we'll write here the class name is p1, and after this we'll write here dot attr. We'll write here ID. So we want to change the ID. The next parameter is going to be the new ID. So we'll write here inside double inverted commas ID p2, or we can say we can write here p2 ID. Fine. So that there will be no confusion for you guys. Now save this program. So let's check it out if it's working or not. Click on the box. You can see it says ID p1, right? This is the ID and this function is currently working. Now click on the button over here. You can see we have clicked on this button. Now click on the box again and you can see it says p2 ID. The ID of this paragraph tag is changed. We can do it with the help of attribute method only. This method is useful if we want to change the style or something of any element, or we want to change something inside an element. So this method is simple and easy. You guys can do it by yourself as well. Now the next method is the CSS method. We have been using this method since we started the jQuery part, right? So we can get the CSS properties of any element with the help of this property. What we have to do is we have to comment this piece of code first. So we'll comment it out first and we will write here. Now what we want to do is we want to access the CSS property of any HTML element. So we'll write here dollar. We'll try to access the CSS property of this box. So we'll write here dot div1. This is the class of our box. Then we'll write here click again. This is an event. We'll write here function, and inside this function what we'll do is we'll write a code. Now we'll write here alert. We'll use the alert method. So we are trying to display the properties of this box inside the alert method. What we'll do is we'll write here dollar. Then inside this we'll write dot div1, and after this we'll write dot css, and we want to know, let's say, the background color of this box. Fine. So we'll write here background color. So this code over here will return the RGB value of the background color of the box. Save the program and click on the box. You can see we have the RGB value as 127, 255, 212. This is the RGB value of aquamarine color. Of course, we can change this property as well. We can change the background color on button click. So we'll do this again. What we'll do is we'll write here before this piece of code dollar, and we'll again access the button. We'll write here hash btn1. Then we'll write here click and we'll create a function. Fine. Now inside this we'll write dollar. Then we'll again access the division. So we'll write here dot div1. Then we'll write here dot css, and we want to change the background color. Fine. Now the background color is going to be, let's say, green. So we did it here. We want to change the background color. So we have the first argument as the CSS property, which is background color, and the second argument is going to be the change. So we want to change the color to green. Now what we'll do is we'll save this piece of code, and you can see the color is changing to green on clicking the button over here. If we click on this box again, you can see the RGB value is also changed now. You can see the RGB value is 0,128,0, which is the RGB value of green color. We can make certain styling changes to HTML elements using this method. Like we can change the font style, font color, or basically we can change any CSS property using this CSS method. So with this, we have come to the end of jQuery DOM manipulation part 1. We have some more methods present in jQuery, which we'll be discussing in the upcoming video. Until then, I want you guys to redo all this stuff through which we came across in today's video, and let us know if you learned something new. Here's the code from the last part, wherein we have a box with some text present inside the box. The color will change to green on clicking the button over here, because we have used the CSS method to change the background color of this whole box to green. In this video, we'll be going through some more methods present in jQuery that can help us manipulate the document object model. The first method we are going to discuss is the append method. The append method is used to append something inside a particular element. Let's say we want to add something inside this box after paragraph 1. Let's say we want to add an image or some text or anything we can add. For doing such tasks, we have the append method and the prepend method. So both these methods work within a particular tag. It means that if we are using the append method, then it will add something inside the specific box only, not outside of it. The same goes with the prepend method as well. So let's see how these methods actually work in jQuery. What we'll do is we'll add another paragraph over here inside the box, but this time we'll use jQuery for that. So we'll move to a JavaScript file. Here's a JavaScript file. We'll comment this piece of code as well. Or let's say let's remove this piece of code. You can get this code from the last part. Now what we'll do is we'll write here $. Then we'll try to access this button over here. So we'll write here button 1. This is the ID of our button. Then we'll write here click and we'll create a function over here. Fine, an anonymous function. So this is a function. Now inside of this function, what we'll do is we'll use the append method within the div tag. So we'll write here $. Then we'll try to access the div tag with class as div1. And the next thing we are going to do is we are going to use the append method. So we'll write here append, and inside of it we'll write here inside double quotes P. P stands for paragraph tag. We have to write the HTML part over here. Now inside this we'll write this is paragraph 2. We can also write here this is box 2. It totally depends upon us what we want to write. Now this will add a paragraph inside this box. Save the program. Click on the button over here and you can see a paragraph present inside the box over here. You can see the paragraph says this is paragraph 2. Similarly, we can add images or anything here in place of this second paragraph. All we have to do is to pass the HTML code here as a parameter to this append method. For example, let's say we want to add an image over here. So for that, what we'll do is we'll write here, we'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here. Fine, we'll comment this piece of code for now because we are adding images. So we'll comment it out. Now inside here what we'll do is instead of passing this paragraph tag over here, what we'll do is we'll write here the img tags. So we'll write here img src is equals to, let's say, images slash j1.png, and then we'll write here, okay, we have to put this inside double quotes. So then we'll write here height. Let's define the height and width as well. So we'll define the height as, let's say, 100 pixels, and we'll define the width as well. So we'll write here width is equals to 100 pixels. Fine. So here's a code. Now we have to close this image tag over here. So we are done with it. Now keep one thing in mind, guys, that if we want to use double inverted commas within the HTML tags, like we are using double inverted commas for height and for image source as well. So in that case, we have to use single quotes to pass the element as the parameter. Just keep this thing in mind, otherwise jQuery will not work. So save this program for now and click on the button over here. You can see on clicking the button we have an image over here inside the box. It's not totally inside the box because we have used some styling for this box as well. So we have to style this box as well. For that we can pass the ID over here as well, and then we can define those properties inside the CSS file with that particular ID. Fine. I hope you guys can do it by yourself. Now the following method is the prepend method that does the same task, but it adds the element at the beginning of the box. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll create a button for prepend over here first. So we'll copy this piece of code, we'll paste it here, we'll change the button ID to btn2 and we'll change the name to prepend. Fine. Let's change this name to append as well. So we'll write here append. Save it now. You can see we have two buttons over here, one for append and the other one is for prepend. Fine. Now we'll add some text before the paragraph. So what we want to do is we want to add some text before this paragraph somewhere here inside the box. So for that we have to use the prepend method. The syntax remains the same. So what we have to do is we have to again write here $. Then we have to access the prepend button. So for that we have the button ID as btn2. Then we'll write here .click and then we'll create a function over here. Fine. Now inside this function we'll again access the division. So we'll write here again .div1. Now instead of append we'll write here prepend. Fine. As we want to add a paragraph over here, so what we can do here is we can write here inside double quotes p, and then we have to close this as well. So now we'll write here this is paragraph 2 using prepend. Fine. Save it now. Click on the button over here, click on prepend. You can see we have this is paragraph 2 using prepend over here inside the box, and this is present before the actual paragraph. We can also use the append method. So if we click on this append button, you can see we have an image, but this image is outside of the box. This is because of the CSS properties. So what we can do is we can remove some of the CSS properties from here and it will work fine, I guess. So we'll remove these properties from here. Now let's see if it's working or not. Save it now. Click on append. You can see the image inside the box after this paragraph, and click on prepend. You can see we have a paragraph over here and it says this is paragraph 2 using prepend. Remove this margin top as well. Save the program now, and now I guess it will work fine. Click on append. You can see we have an image over here after this paragraph. Click on prepend and you can see we have a paragraph over here. Fine. So here we can use both the append and the prepend methods simultaneously to add anything to a HTML element. Now the next two methods are the after and before methods. Both these methods do the same task, but the only difference is these methods do such tasks outside of the element. For example, the after method will add a paragraph, but the location of the paragraph will be outside of the box. Fine. So the syntax is also simple. So let's add the buttons over here for after and before method. So what we'll do is we'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here. So we have two more buttons. We'll write here before and then we'll write here after. We'll change the button IDs as well. So instead of 1 and 2 we'll write here btn3 and btn4. We'll save it and you can see we have 4 buttons over here. Fine. What we'll do is we'll use the br tag over here to make it more clear. So you can see now we have append, prepend, before and after. So we'll write the code for before and after now. So what we'll do here is we'll use these buttons to add text to a HTML file. So for that we'll write here $, and then we'll again access btn3 for the before method. So we'll write here function and we'll create an anonymous function. Now we'll do the same task. We'll write here $, and then we'll access the division. We'll write here div1, then we'll use the before method for before button. So we'll add a paragraph over here. So what we'll do is we'll copy this from here. So we'll add the same paragraph. We'll make some changes. So we'll paste it here and we'll write using before over here. Fine. We'll do the same thing for after as well. We'll copy this piece of code. We'll paste it here, and instead of 3 the button ID is 4, and instead of before we have to write here after. Fine. We'll change the text as well. We'll write here after, and now we are good to go. Save this piece of code. Move on to the browser and click on before button. You can see it's not working as of now. So there's something wrong. Okay, we have an error over here. So what we did wrong is we have an extra pair of these brackets over here. Save it now. Click on the before button. You can see we have a paragraph over here which says this is paragraph 2 using before. So this is the result of before method, and if we click on after button, you can see the paragraph after the box. These paragraphs are not present inside the box. If we want to use the append method, you can see on clicking the append button, the text or the image is present inside of the box after a particular paragraph, and on clicking the prepend button, the paragraph is present inside the box only. So this is the difference between append, prepend and before after methods in jQuery. I hope you guys should have got the difference between the append method and the after method, as well as the prepend and before method as well. So let's move ahead and we'll discuss two more methods now, the remove method and the empty method. The remove method is used to remove any tag from the HTML document. Like if we write here, so let's add the buttons for these methods first. What we'll do is we'll copy this from here and we'll add two more buttons. Fine. We'll add the buttons after using br tags. So the button IDs will change to 5 and 6, and the button names is going to be remove and empty. Fine. Save it, and you can see we have two more buttons over here, remove and empty. We'll again use the br tag over here to make it more clear. Save it, and you can see we have 6 buttons now. The remove and empty buttons are not working as of now, so let's write the code for these buttons as well. Now what we'll do is we'll remove this whole box from the screen on clicking the remove button. So for that we have to write here $. We have to access the remove button, so we'll use the ID over here. The ID is 5. Then we'll write here again click. This thing remains the same every time we use jQuery. So the next thing we are going to do is we are again going to use the div class. So we'll write here div1 and then we'll write here remove. Fine. We have to create a method remove and we are good to. So save this program and click on the remove button over here, and you guys can see the whole box is completely gone. However, the empty method works a bit differently from the remove method. It makes an element empty without deleting the HTML element. It will remove the paragraph, but the box will remain there. So let's write the code for empty method as well. What we'll do is we'll copy this piece of code from here, we'll paste it here, we'll change the button ID to 6, and instead of using the remove method, we'll use the empty method. Fine. Save this program. You can see on clicking the remove button, the box is completely gone, and on clicking the empty button, the paragraph is gone, but the box is still here. Fine. So this is the difference between the remove and the empty methods in jQuery. With this, we come to the end of this jQuery DOM manipulation tutorial. jQuery Ui is an open source JavaScript library built on the top of jQuery library. So let's go through the website for jQuery Ui, and the rest we'll discuss over there only. What we'll do is we'll go to Chrome and we'll write here jQuery Ui, press enter and click on the first link. So here we are on the website of jQuery Ui, where we have several options present, whether it be downloading jQuery, or we can also glance through the website to know more about the new features added to jQuery Ui. You can see over here, if I zoom it out a bit, you can see it's written over here that jQuery Ui is a curated set of user interface interactions, effects, widgets, and themes built on top of the jQuery JavaScript library. Whether you are building a highly interactive web applications or you just need to add a date picker to a form control, jQuery Ui is the perfect choice. It basically contains several interfaces, effects, widgets, and much more things that make jQuery Ui quite helpful and essential for making a web page more interactive. All these effects, widgets, and interfaces are predefined in jQuery Ui. All we have to do is to use them with the correct syntax and we are good to go. You can see over here, if we click on these draggable, droppable, or any of these interactions, click on it and you can see we have a box over here. We can drag it around. We have the source code for this, and we have to write this code to make a box movable around the screen. So this is why we use jQuery Ui, or jQuery Ui allows us to do such tasks more easily than JavaScript or jQuery. So let's move ahead, and we can also go through the about section over here. If we click on about over here, and if we want to know more about jQuery Ui, you can see all the goals and visions behind creating jQuery Ui and all. It is an open source and transparent library. It means that all the members in the community, whether it be developers, designers, or experts or managers, anyone in the community is free to connect with the jQuery team. If you scroll down, you can see the list of all the prominent contributors here. All of them gave something to jQuery UI in different ways. Now let's move ahead to the downloading part, and we'll download the jQuery file and open the RAR file. So we have to extract this file in the same folder wherein we are saving our jQuery related programs. What we'll do is we'll save all the files inside a new folder and we'll name it jQuery UI. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll move to the home page, and you can see over here we have the stable version, or we have the old and unsupported versions as well. This jQuery 1.8 is the stable version. We'll click on it and it will automatically download. So here you can see we have WinRAR over here. It is a RAR file. Now what we have to do is we have to extract this file. Fine. So we'll extract it. We'll go to jQuery, we'll create a new folder, we'll name it as jQuery UI, and we are good to go. We'll click on OK, and the file is now extracted. You can check it by going through the same folder. So what we'll do is we'll close this WinRAR. Now the only task left now is to add these files inside our HTML files. So we'll add all the required files, and let's quickly take a look inside the jQuery UI folder and see what we have here. Fine, we'll move to our jQuery UI folder. So here's a jQuery UI folder inside the jQuery folder. This is the jQuery UI, and inside this what we'll do is we'll create a single folder. So we'll cut all these files from here and we'll paste them here. Fine, we'll delete this particular folder. Now here we are inside the jQuery UI folder. You can see we have external and images. We have two more folders over here. The external folder contains the jQuery file, and the images folder have certain images over here. You can see these all are icons. Now we have these CSS files over here. We have the jQuery JS file as well. We have jQuery Ui.js file as well. And we have all the minified versions as well. Now the reason behind having a lot of external CSS files and images over here is jQuery UI consists of widgets and user interfaces. That's why it requires some external CSS files and images to make it work more efficiently. Now the plain jQuery library is plain JavaScript, but jQuery UI consists of some images and CSS files as well. So let's add these files to our HTML file now. What we'll do is we'll open VS Code and Chrome browser side by side. So here is the result of our first program. Now what we'll do is we'll add these files inside a HTML file. So first of all, we have to include the JavaScript file. But for that, what we'll do is we'll write here script, and then we'll write here src is going to be jQuery, and let's check out the name of that folder again. So here you can see we have the folder name as jQuery -ui. So we'll write here jQuery UI / and inside this we'll add this particular file. We'll add jQuery Ui.js because we want to include the JavaScript file, right? So we'll write here type is equals to text /JavaScript, and we are good to go. Close the script tag, save it, and we have added the JavaScript file over here. Now we have to include some more files to use jQuery UI completely, in particularly the CSS files. Now the question in your mind may come, what are these other files used for? Right, these files are the minified versions of same jQuery and CSS files, smaller in size, but the working remains almost the same. So what we'll do is we'll add the CSS files as well over here. For that, we'll move to a head section and we'll write here link rel, and inside this we'll write jQuery -ui /. Now we have to include three files over here. The first file name is jQuery Ui.css. So we'll write here jQuery. Okay, what we'll do is we'll write here rel, then we'll write a style sheet, and we'll pass the source inside href. So we'll write here jQuery UI /, then we'll write here jQuery Ui.css. So we'll write here jQuery jQuery.ui.css. Now we have included one file over here. We'll close this link tag and we'll copy this as well. Fine. To add other two files. So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste it here twice. Fine. Now we have three CSS files over here. We'll change the names. So the first one is jQuery Ui. The second one is jQuery Ui.structures.css. So we'll write here structure.css. And the last file is jQuery Ui.theme.css. Fine. So we have added all the required files to our HTML file. Now we don't need any more files now. We can check it by going through the console if there's anything wrong in the program or not. Now before we wrap up this video, one more thing is this jQuery UI file, this JavaScript file which we are adding, we have to add this file after the plain jQuery file only, because the code executes line by line and we may have to face so many errors or difficulties because of it. So that's why we add the jQuery UI file only after the plain jQuery file always. Keep this thing in mind, guys. The calculator app is a simple program to work on. We have done such a task using pure JavaScript in the past, and we already have an idea about how this thing works. The task is simple. We have to create an app where we can perform several arithmetical operations without a problem. So we'll divide this program into three different parts. In the first part, we'll create the structure of this calculator app using HTML. Then we'll style this app using CSS, and then finally we'll add functionality using jQuery this time. As simple as that. Let's start with the programming part directly. We'll start with HTML by creating the structure of our app. So we have several buttons in our calculator app, as we know. We have numbers, we have operations, we have many more other buttons in a calculator app. So let's add them here now. What we'll do is we'll write here inside the body tag. So for now, let's remove this calculator using jQuery heading. Now we'll use div tag over here. So we'll write here div. So we are going to use a class. So let's say the class name is calculator. Fine. Now inside this div tag, we have to create a calculator, right? So for that, the first thing we are going to do is we are going to write here a paragraph. So we'll write here inside this paragraph jQuery calculator. So this is going to be the heading of our calculator, or we can use any image here as well if you want to put any logo of your own in your calculator. So you can do that. Now the next thing we are going to do here is we are going to take another div. Now inside this we are going to write the program for the display area of our calculator. So what we'll do right here is we'll write here class, and let's say we are writing here class row. Fine. So this is our class name. Now inside this div we'll write div. Class is going to be, let's say, screen, and then we'll write here numbers. So let's say we are writing here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Fine. Now we are done with this. Save this, and here you can see we have one heading over here which says jQuery calculator, and we have 10 different digits, right? Now the next task we are going to do here is we are going to create the area for a buttons. So we are again going to take a div tag for that. We are going to write here div. Class is going to be the same. So let's say the class is going to be cal row. Fine. So we'll change the name here as well. We'll write here cal row. And now after this div tag, we have to use several div tags inside one div tag, right? So we'll write here div. Class is going to be, let's say, button. And then we have our first button as, let's say, C. Fine. We have to do this again. We have to add so many buttons. So we'll write here div. Then class is going to be button again for this button as well. And the button name is going to be this. Fine. The next thing we are going to do here is we are going to write here div. Class name is going to be button again. And we are going to write here, so let's change this class. We are going to put a backspace as well. So we'll write here backspace, button backspace basically. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to write the name of our button over here. So let's say the name of our button is back for backspace. Now the next thing we'll do here is we'll use one more class. We'll use one more div tag. So this time we are going to use this one for plus minus. So we'll see the functionality of these buttons later on. For now, just focus on the structure of this calculator. So we are going to write here div, and class is going to be button plus minus. Fine. Then we'll make a symbol for plus and minus. So we'll write here plus and minus. Fine. We have closed this div tag and the another div tag is also closed. Fine. Let me zoom this out. Let me zoom Visual Studio Code a bit so that it will be easy for you guys to understand for now. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to add another button over here. So first for that we have to write here div. So let's say we have a button over here as %. Fine. So we'll write here class is going to be button and the name of this button is going to be %. Fine. So let me break it down a bit so that it will be easy for you guys to understand. So here's the code. We have these three div tags inside the single div tag. This is because what we are doing here is we are adding a buttons over here. So this is the first row wherein we'll have 4 different buttons, or we can say 5 different buttons. We have a C button, then we have CE, back, plus minus, and a percentage button. Fine. Now what we'll do is we'll copy this whole piece of code from here. We'll do the same for all the rows. Fine. So we'll paste it here. Now we have to change the button names. So instead of C, what we'll do here in the second row, we'll write here 7. Then we have 8 after CE. So we'll write here 8. Then instead of backspace, we'll write here 9. And we'll change the class name to button only. Fine. We'll change this as well. Instead of plus minus, we'll write here divide. So we have a divide symbol over here, and the next thing we are going to do is we are going to write here square root in place of remainder. So for now we'll write here sqrt. So I hope you guys understood this. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to copy this from here and we are going to paste it again here. Fine. So let's change the name of this class as well. So let's say the name of this class is button device for division. So we'll do the same thing for all the arithmetical operators. So the next row is going to contain 5. Then we have 6. Okay, we have to start this row from 4. Then we have 5. Then we have 6. And the two arithmetic operators are going to be multiply and 1 by x. Fine, so we'll write here asterisk. And instead of this, we'll write here 1 by x. Fine. So we'll change this class to button inverse so that it will be easy for you guys to identify all these buttons. That's why we are doing it. And instead of asterisk, we'll write here button multiply. Fine. So this is going to be the class name for multiplication. I hope you guys got this. Now we have to include 2 more rows. Fine. The next row is going to contain, so first we'll copy it from here, we'll paste it here, and the next row is going to contain 1, 2, 3. Then we have 2 operators. So the 2 operators are going to be pi and let's say minus. Okay, so we have to write here minus and we have to change the class to button minus and we have to write here pi. Fine. So we'll change this class to button pi. And we are done with 4 rows. Now we have to include 1 more row. So this row is going to contain only 4 buttons. So we'll paste it here. We have to remove. So we have to insert 0 first. So let's say the class for 0 is button 0. and the class for decimal is going to be button decimal. So the next thing we have to include here is decimal. We'll write here button decimal, and the third one is going to be plus and equals to. Fine, so we don't need this div tag here. We'll remove it from here and we'll write here plus. So we'll write here button P for plus, and okay, so what we can do is we can write here button add for plus, and the last one is going to be equals to. So we'll write here button equal. Fine. So we are done with the HTML part. We are done with the structure basically. Let me reduce the size of VS Code. Now save this program, and you can see we have all the buttons over here. We have C, CE, back, and so on. So you can see we have all the numbers, we have all the symbols, and we have some other symbols as well. We have pi over here, we have 1 by x, we have square root, and a lot more things, right? Now what we have to do is we have to style these buttons. So for styling, let's move on to the CSS file now, and we'll start styling our calculator there only. So here we are in the CSS file. Let's start styling. What we'll do is we'll start with the whole body tag first. What we'll do is we'll write here body, and the body color is going to be something different, or we can say something other than white, right? So we'll write here background color. Now we'll put some RGB values. We have some predefined RGB values with us, so we'll use them for now. You guys can use any color of your choice. So we'll write here 236, 232, 175. Fine. So this is the RGB value for this particular color. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to write here margin top. Margin top is going to be 150 pixels in order to bring the calculator at the center of the browser. Fine. Save the program, and you can see the change in the background color. So the next thing we have to do is to add the name of our calculator. For that, what we'll do is we'll style a p tag. So you can see it over here inside the HTML file. We have to style this p tag over here. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll write here after this p. We are going to style the whole tag. We'll write here margin. Margin is going to be 0 for this one. Then we have font family as well. So we'll write here font family. We'll use this one. And the next thing we are going to do is we are going to write here font weight. Font weight is going to be bolder. Then we have position. Position is going to be relative for this. Then we have left. So left is going to be, let's say, 35%. Fine, we want it to be at the center of a calculator app. So that's why we are using 35% over here. Save it now. And you can see we have the jQuery calculator heading present at the center of the screen. So we'll achieve the whole calculator step by step. We don't need to hurry in this. The next thing we have to do is to create the body of this calculator. Now for that, what we have to do is we have to use the calculator class. So if we move back to our HTML file, you can see the class name is calculator for the parent div tag. We are going to use this. Now what we'll do is we'll write here dot calculator. This is how we can access any particular class in CSS or in jQuery as well. Now we are going to write here position. Position is going to be relative. Then we have margin. Margin is going to be 1em auto. Fine. The next thing is going to be padding. Padding is going to be 1em and auto as well. Okay, so instead of auto, what we can do is we can write here 0 for padding. We don't want any automatic padding in a program. So the display is going to be inline block. The width is going to be, let's say, 350 pixels. Fine. For the whole calculator body, the width is going to be 350 pixels. Now the background color is going to be beige. Fine. Border radius we have to mention here. Border radius is going to be 25 pixels. Okay, 25 pixels we have to write here. and the box shadow. Box shadow will also define. We'll write here 5 pixel, 5 pixel, 15 pixel, and then we'll write 3 pixels. So the box shadow is for all the 4 sides of the box. Then we'll mention the color as well. So let's say the shadow color is going to be black. Fine. Now we'll write here font family. Font family is going to be oxygen. So we'll write here oxygen, and that's it. So save the program. And you can see we have the whole outer body of our calculator. Now that we are done with the outer body of our calculator, we'll move on and we'll work on the buttons and rows now. So you can see we have the calculator over here. It's not present in between for now. We'll discuss it why it's not working fine. So we have done a mistake over here. Let me check. We have to write here. Let's try block inline. Save it now, and you can see the calculator body is now present at the center of our browser. Fine. So that's why it was not working. Now it's working totally fine. We have the calculator at the center of our browser. Now let's work on the buttons and rows as well. What we'll do is we'll write here dot calcrow. So this is another class name. You can see it over here. We have the class name for screen. Now what we'll do is we'll write here text align at the center. Fine. Save the program. And you can see we have the text aligned at the center. The next thing to work on is the display area. For that we have the class as screen inside the calcrow class. So let's write the code over here for the same. What we'll do is we'll access the screen. So we'll write here dot calcrow. Then we'll write here div dot screen. Fine. Now the font family is going to be Droid Sans Mono, and the display is going to be table. The next thing we are going to write here is the width. So width is going to be 85%. Following it, we'll define the background color as well. So we'll write here background color, and the background color is going to be white. Fine. Not pure white, it's sort of gray, I guess. Now we'll write here text align to the right. We are writing the code for the screen. Fine guys. So we'll write here font size. Font size is going to be 2M. And the min height. So the min height is going to be 1.2M. Then we have margin left. It's going to be 0.5M. Padding right. Fine. Padding right is going to be 0.5M again. The next thing is going to be border. So the border of a screen is going to be of different color. So we'll write here border. And the border is going to be 1 pixel solid and of different color. So the color code is 888 for this particular color. And then we'll write here color. Color is going to be this one. Fine. Now save the program, and you can see here on the browser that the display area is changed now. You can see it over here. This is the display area of a calculator app. The color is changed and the styling is also changed. So we are done with the display area. Now we'll work on buttons. So let's move on and we'll write the code for buttons. For that we have to write here dot calcrow div. The first property is going to be text align. Text align is going to be at the center. Display is going to be inline block. Font weight is going to be bold. Then we have border. Border is going to be 1 pixel solid and of grayish color. Fine. Then we have the background color. Background color is going to be this off-white color, we can say. Then we have padding. Padding is going to be 10 pixel and 0. Then we have margin. Margin is going to be 7 pixels and 5 pixels. Fine. We have the border radius as well. So we'll write here border radius for the buttons is going to be 15 pixel. Box shadow we have to mention. Box shadow is going to be 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 1 pixel and 1 pixel. The color of box shadow is going to be dark gray. Then we have width. So width is going to be 50 pixel for each button. Save the program and you can see we are almost done with the app now. The calculator looks nice, right? The last thing we have to manage are the buttons present in the last row. We are talking about these 4 buttons over here. So we have to manage them. What we'll do is we'll increase the size of this equals to button. Fine. Then it will look completely nice. So what we'll do here is we'll write here dot calc row. Then we'll write here div dot equal. We'll access the div tag with class as equal and we'll write here width for this is going to be 112 pixel. Fine. Then we'll again do the same thing. We'll write here calc row div dot equal and the margin left. Fine. So we'll write here margin left and the margin left is going to be 5 pixels. Save the program and you can see the calculator is completely done now. What we did here is we increased the size of a equals to button and we are good to go now, right? Now that we are done with the structure and styling of a calculator app, the last remaining part here is the functionality of a calculator. We'll use jQuery for adding functionality to our calculator. So let's move on to the JavaScript file and we'll write the code there for adding functionality. So here we are in the JavaScript file. We'll start writing our code. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to write here $. We are going to write here document dot ready. Then we'll write inside it function. And now we are good to write a code. So firstly we'll take some variables. So we'll write here var result. This will hold the result. This variable is going to be 0 initially. Then we have var previous entry. So we'll write here var prev entry. This is again going to be 0. We are initializing these variables with some values. The next variable is going to be operation. The value is going to be null at the start. Then we have var current entry. So this is going to be a string. We'll write here 0. And finally we'll write here update screen. This is going to be a function. So we'll write here result. That's it. So these are all the variables and functions we are going to use in a JavaScript part, or we can say the jQuery part. Now we have to add some events. For that we'll write here $. Then we'll access the class. So we'll write here dot button. Then we'll write here on click. So this is the event name. We'll write here click. On clicking, what we want is we want to call a function. Fine. So we'll write here function and this function is going to have a parameter with it. Fine. So this is it. Inside this function, what we'll do is we'll check if the button is pressed or not. So we'll write here var button pressed is equals to, we'll access the HTML document. We'll write here this dot HTML. Fine. Now what we'll do is we'll write here console dot log. And inside this we'll write button pressed. Fine. So what we basically did here is we wrote the code to check if the button is pressed or not. So if the button is pressed, the value will be displayed on console. So let's check it out. We'll zoom our Chrome browser. We'll go to console and we'll try to press a button. You can see the button is pressed. So it's working totally fine for now. What we'll do is we'll close the console and we'll write the code again. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to write code for all the buttons. Fine. What we'll do is we'll write here if button pressed is going to be C. So this is our first button. We are going to write the code for this one. So then what will happen is the result is going to be 0. Fine. Then we'll change the value for current entry as well. We'll write here current entry and the value of current entry is going to be 0 again. Fine. Now the next thing we are going to do here is we are going to write the code for other buttons as well. So we'll write here else if button pressed is going to be EE, then what will happen is the current entry is going to be 0 again. Fine. Then we'll write the code for back, plus minus, then we have decimal and we have many more buttons, right? So let's do it as well. We'll write here else if the next button is back. We'll write here button pressed is triple equals to back. Then we'll write here inside this current entry is equals to current entry dot substring, and we'll define the substring inside here. We'll write here 0, comma current entry dot length -1. So we are going to decrease the length of our current entry by 1 on pressing the back button. So it's basically the backspace key. Now we are done with it. Now the next thing we have to write here is for plus minus. So we'll write here else if button pressed is going to be plus minus then what we'll do is we'll multiply the current entry by -1. Fine. So if the user has a value -3 on a calculator screen and if he presses plus minus, so what will happen is -3 will be multiplied with -1 and the value is going to be 3 only. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll write here current entry is equals to -1. Fine. So we are going to multiply this value by -1. Then we have else if button pressed is going to be decimal. So what we'll do is we'll add a decimal in current entry. So what we'll write here is we'll write here current entry plus is equals to decimal. Fine. Then we have is number. So if we write here else if is number and we have button pressed inside it. Fine. Now what will happen is we have to use if here again. We'll write here if current entry triple equals to 0, current entry is equals to button pressed. So we'll write here current entry is equals to button pressed. Fine. Now we have to write here else part as well. So we'll write here else current entry is equals to current entry plus button pressed. Fine. So we are done with it. Now the next thing we have to write here is the else if part. So we have to write the code for plus, minus, multiplication and division as well, right? So for that, what we'll do is we'll write here is operator. So we'll write the code for all of them later on. So for now we'll write here is operator, button pressed. We have to write here preventry is equals to parse float. We have to make this value in decimal. So we'll write here parse float current entry. Fine. Then we have operation. So we'll update the value of operation to button pressed. And we'll write here current entry is equals to. Now we have to write the code for modulus, we have to write the code for square root, we have to write the code for 1 by x, and we have to write the code for pi. So we are talking about this particular row, or we can say this particular column where we have modulus, square root, 1 by x and pi. So what we are going to do here is we are going to write here else if button pressed is equals to modulus. So what we have to do is we have to write here current entry. Current entry, we have to divide the current entry by 100. So we'll write here current entry is equals to current entry by 100. Fine. Then we have else if the user presses square root, button pressed is equals to square root. What we have to do is we have to write here current entry is equals to, we have to use math.sqrt. This is a predefined library, so we have to pass current entry inside this. So we'll write here current entry inside this particular library. Now the next thing we have to write here is the code for else if button pressed is going to be 1 by x. So we have to write here 1 by x. Then the change is going to be in current entry. So we'll write here current entry is equals to 1 divided by current entry. Fine. Now we are left with pi and is equals to only. So we'll write here for pi first. We'll write here else if button pressed is going to be pi. What we have to do is we have to write here current entry is equals to math.pi. Fine. Now we have to write here else if button pressed is going to be is equals to we have to write here current entry. We have to update current entry every time only. So we'll write here operate and we'll pass preventry, then we'll pass current entry and operation. Fine. Then after this operation is going to be null. So we'll write here operation is going to be null. Fine. Now what we'll do is we'll write here update screen. Update screen is going to be the screen is going to be updated with current entry basically. So we'll write here update screen and current entry. Fine. So let's check it out if this thing is working or not. Save the program, move to the browser, and you can see it's still saying update screen is not defined. Fine. Let me check if there's any mistake in our program. So what we have to do is we have to remove this bracket from here and we have to paste them here at the end because we want this program to be present inside these brackets. Save it now and let's see if it's working or not. So you can see it's still not working. let's do one thing. The update screen is not defined yet, so we'll comment this update screen for now, and we'll see if this thing works now or not. So you can see it's working for all the numbers, but it says is number is not defined yet, so we'll define it now. So let's move ahead and we'll uncomment these two things. We'll uncomment update screen now. So the next thing we have to do is we have to write the code for update screen first. So let's do it. We'll write here update screen. So update screen is going to be a function. So we'll write here function. Function will take a parameter. We'll write here display value. Fine. So then we'll write here where display value is equals to display value dot toString. We are going to display the value in string form, so we'll write here toString. We'll convert it and then we'll access screen. So we'll write here dollar, then we have the screen class as screen, then we'll write here dot html, we'll write here display value dot substring. Fine. So we'll write here 0 to 10. That's it. Let's see, we have defined update screen as well now. Save it and we'll move to browser. We'll open a console. So it says display value to is not a function. So we have made a spelling mistake somewhere. Here it is. I'll write here display value everywhere. Fine. Save it now. Move to the browser. Okay, so it's saying display value is not a function as of now. We'll check it later if this thing works or not. So what we are going to do now is we are going to write further code. So we'll write the code for is number first. We'll write here is number. We'll check if the entry provided is number or not. So we'll write here function. Function is going to bring a value. Then we have return. Will return is not a number. Fine. We'll write here value. Then we'll check for operator as well. So we'll write here is operator. We'll write function and then we have the value of this function. We'll return here something. So we'll write here return value is equals to, the first value is going to be divide or we'll write here value triple is equals to asterisk for multiplication, or value is going to be addition, or it can be subtraction. Fine. So we'll write here value minus. Fine. Now we have to write a function. So we'll use the operate function. So we'll write here operate function and it will have three parameters a, b and operation. Fine. Now we have to write here a. So a is going to be parse float. So we are going to change the value of a to parse float. Then we have b. We'll do the same thing for b as well. We'll write here parse float. We'll write here b. Then we'll write here console dot log a comma b comma operation. So this thing is to check. We'll write here if operation is going to be plus, then it will return a plus b. Fine. Same thing for all the operators. So we'll copy it from here, we'll paste it 4 times. We'll change the values over here. We'll write here plus, minus, multiplication and division. Fine. We'll change the symbols here as well. We'll write here division, multiplication, subtraction and addition. So we are done with it. Let's check it out if this thing is working or not. So it says it's not working for now. Let me check if there's any error or some sort of thing. Okay, so we have done here wrong is we have written here toString with a small s. Save it now and check if it's working. Okay, it's working totally fine now. You can see we have a answers over here, so you can see everything is working. So this is how it actually works. So the error was with toString. Actually we have written here toString with a small s, so we have to replace it with capital S. Save it now and you can see the calculator is working totally fine. Let's try to do some calculations over here first. We'll increase the size of a browser. Now let's say we are adding some numbers. So let's say we have 41, we are adding 9 in it, so we have the answer as 50. Let's see if other buttons are working or not. So we'll write here 45, we'll click on plus minus and you can see the value of plus minus is minus 45. Click on it again, you can see the value is changed to 45 again. So the CE button is also working fine. We'll take a random number, so let's say the number is 400. We'll click on SQRT. You can see we have the square root of 400, which is 20. Now if we click on pi, we have the value as 3.1415, which is the actual value of pi. Then we have modulus. So let's say we are writing here 4000. We'll click on modulus and you can see it is 40. So this is also working fine. Now we'll write here 523 and then we'll click on 1 by x. So you can see it gives us the value of 1 by 523 or 1 by any number we are providing it basically. So let's say we are writing here 10 and we'll click on 1 by x. You can see the value is 0.1 because it is dividing 1 by 10. So I hope you guys must have got an idea about how we can create a calculator app using HTML, CSS and jQuery. It's easy to create a calculator using jQuery than to use JavaScript for creating a calculator, right? Now the task for you guys is to show some creativity with what we have done till now. Let us know in the comments what exciting thing you did. And with that, we have come to an end of this full course tutorial. I hope it was informative and interesting. If you have any question about the topics covered in this video, feel free to put them in the comments section. Our team will help you solve your queries. Thank you for watching, keep coding and stay tuned to SimpliCode.